Maybe just a quick intro of building 180. Just give us a quick intro into what you do, who you are, and really excited to kick this off.
Thanks. I'm Meredith Winner. I'm a Bay Area, San Francisco-based art producer and curator. I'm co-founder and CEO of Building 180, and we are an art production and consulting agency. We mostly produce large-scale, site-specific installation work across a very wide range of mediums, from lighting art to murals to sculptural installations, both public and private, across the country and in the world.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about, I imagine with COVID and both art installations, I feel like art is usually inside, which isn't ideal in 2020 or in general. So would love to talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing to help support artists over 2020, and maybe just touch a little bit about how you've been using tools to help that happen in this kind of new world we live in.
Sure. We have actually did a really good job of keeping up our business in 2020. We had a lot of really big clients and things in the pipeline that we were able to push through, in part because our work usually is up into a construction schedule. So because construction is essential, we were able to fulfill our duties of the art installations alongside the construction schedule, which was really fortunate. But we also started a nonprofit arm in 2020 in March in the wake of COVID. We started fundraising to pay artists to paint murals on boarded storefronts in the Bay Area. And to date, we've done over 110 murals, I think it is now. And we just got a grant from the city to do another 30. So we are kicking that off now. We have a few underway, and we've been using Airtable to really track mostly our sales pipeline, also using it as a CRM. We're hoping to use it for more task management. And I'm learning all things every day, thanks to you guys.
Yeah, no, I think I remember. So where would folks maybe learn a little bit more about, you mentioned 110 murals. I've had the joy of seeing them, although unfortunately only digitally. Where can kind of folks learn more about that project and just get a sense of how beautiful and what the amazing work you guys do is?
On Instagram, it's at Paint the Void Project, and online it's paintthevoid.org. And for what we'll be looking at on our Airtable basis, which I mostly need help with, is Building 180, which we're at Building 180, building180.com.
All right, I'm going to drop that in the chat. Paintthevoid.org. All right, building180.com. Awesome. So before we jump in to the base itself, I've seen the base, but I can imagine you're working with artists or construction companies. You're working with a pipeline. So tell me a little bit about all the challenges of your business at a high level and what you're hoping to accomplish with the base.
I think mostly is that tracking our sales and really targeting our markets, and there's a variety across the various types of work that we do. I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of murals, we do lighting projects. We have different goals for each category or each industry of artwork that we're doing. And we want a goal to work backtrack from for each of those categories, which is based on a set margin. And we also want to use it for task management for active jobs. So, we can be working on a dozen projects or so at a time, wanting to be able to see them, for the fiscal year, and also wanting to have tasks assigned to those. We actually just hired our first employee, which is really exciting. So want to have everybody up on Airtable so that we can keep track of what the team is doing.
Well, first, congrats on hiring an employee. I know that's a huge, huge milestone. So what I'm hearing from you is that, you want to track your deal pipeline, but also all the work that emanates from closed deals, and additionally, kind of get a sense of projections and pipelines according to specific categories.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I'm super excited. So let us know in the chat if you're excited, and we're going to go ahead and share the base here. So this is where I try to do magic and do two things at once, but it usually looks, so I'm going to share my screen with you. So we're going to move over. Okay. I'm sorry. We're good. We're back. I'm really,
Okay, cool.
really apologize. We're going to cut that on the post. That didn't
No
happen.
worries.
So we're back. So we're sharing my screen. I had to reset my mic for some reason. Okay. I really appreciate everyone's patience. Okay. So we're here in the kind of CRM. And how about, Meredith, we just start by giving folks a quick overview of everything. And while you're doing that, I'll note some of the decisions that you've made in building your CRM. So I think we're going to start with this pipeline prospects. Is that I know you've got two of
Yes.
these and that's our first step here, but let's start
Yeah.
with this one right here.
There are two of those, and we were playing with building out our sales funnel of what was needed and what was not needed. And that the biggest change that from the copy to the initial pipeline prospects was that we had different types of stages. And now we have honed in on a better stage system. The first pipeline prospects is linked to some other tables, and I don't know how to delete it without messing everything up. So there's still two, and we're only working off of one of them.
Awesome.
The other things that we're doing are, there's contacts in there. Those are pulling from Gmail with Zapier. And the pipeline prospects copy links to a forecast by job type, which is working backwards from our yearly goal for each type of artwork that we produce.
Okay. So
And
let
then
me,
the contacts.
I think for folks who might be a little less, familiar with this space, what I'm hearing from you is that you've got kind of contacts, straightforward, right?
Yep.
It's your contacts, they're associated to companies, right?
Yes.
So this is where people work, and you've got that association from person to company. And really pipeline and prospects is where the magic happens, if you will. This is where you have an opportunity that's linked to a company, and potentially an artist, which is a link of contact, a little bit of what's being built, and then your status, right? Which is your pipeline, and you've got percentages here, which is really interesting. So you've got this concept of probability of close,
Right.
and job type. So feels like a lead date created. It's a great CRM, I gotta say. Like, I remember when you sent this to me, I was surprised that there was that much. You felt like there was a lot of work to do here. This is a really good CRM and much better than folks, kind of starting out. And then, so here is where you're managing your deals, type, job type, single select, another kind of good practice. But really where I want us to spend our time initially, and I think what'll be unique to folks, is your forecast by job type.
Right.
Right? So this is essentially saying that you have job type as a linked record,
Right.
right? So for every pipeline or deal, let me find that job type. It's a link right here. So tell me a little bit. I want to surface this to everyone because I know that this is very peculiar or very unique. Why didn't you select as a single select, right? Because you could imagine that this is a job type. You had it as a single select here, and then you moved it to a linked record. So I'm happy to talk about that, or if you want to talk about it, I'm happy to
Well,
let you
the
talk
job
about
type
that.
link was before I was figuring out, and Katya also from Airtable helped me set this up, is that forecast by job type is to work against what's in the pipeline so that we can, if you have a goal of $100,000 and there's a job that's getting 50, then obviously it'll calculate that in this table. But it's auto populating it by job type in here based on the far left column. So these are the various types of work we do. And then we wanted to pull that information in there based on what stage the job is in.
Right. Okay. So, usually what's interesting, and I'll reiterate or rephrase what you just said for folks watching, usually when we think of that type of single select, right? That option of like, what is a job type? You would imagine it to be a single select, and then you could potentially group by, let's say, job type, right? So we're going to group it by single select. And then you usually get a value like, you've got 6 million in event installations for this year. However, why you turned it into a linked record is because you wanted this to be something you could work with. So you didn't want just a summary. You wanted to say, how far away are we from our goal? And to
Right.
do that, you need to use roll-ups, right? You need to calculate sums to say sum every single event installation that we have into a value that you can then use. And that's why you've turned it into a linked record. And I know that for a lot of folks, that's confusing. So for instance, let's say we wanted to get back to the 6 million. What I could do is just take all your event installations, turn them into linked records. So I'm just copy pasting. That way we get to that same number. And if I go into forecast by job type and I create a roll up, you created some fancy roll ups. We'll get to those in just a moment. So we're going to call this total value. And then we're going to use a roll up that says, roll up on the pipeline, go to the net estimate. And we just want the sum of the values like that. Create fields. Right, and we get that 6 million we just saw. But what the difference is that if your goal is 10 million, you could say, right, so distance from goal, which you already have, you can do a formula that says, give me 10 million. Is that million? I don't know. Minus.
I don't know. It sounds like a great number.
2021, right? Distance from goal to like that. I'm really bad at naming my fields. And now we're actually working with the field, which we couldn't do before. So let me know in the chat, like if folks, that makes sense. I wanted to make sure that folks understand that distinction as to why you went with the linked record instead of the single select for something that feels like it should be a single select. From there, okay, so I feel like we have, talk to me about active list as well. That feels like another.
Sure. So the active list, and I think that this might be linked to the former pipeline prospects. I didn't delete that one yet because I was still unsure. But the active list, I'm wanting to be linked to the pipeline prospects for jobs that are past a 50% mark so that there's actual tasks associated, real production tasks associated to each of the jobs as they come in. I would love it if it was displayed in the Kanban. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yep.
The Kanban view where there's the header of the job at the top with a task list below it, and I just can't figure out how to get there.
Okay, and what would you like to, by priority, by task status?
Say that again?
So a Kanban is usually organized by a status, right? So a single select. In this case, you'd like it to be organized by task status.
I would love it to be organized, and I don't know if this is possible, by having like the job name at the top with the tasks underneath it.
Okay. Yeah.
It could be, that would be ideal, just so that any of the projects that we are actively working on, we could have the tasks below it. Okay,
great. Okay, so you sent a few more questions, so let's tackle these. So I've got our checklist. We've got an overview. Let me know if folks have a question. This is a very good base. It's always exciting to have a good base. So our first step here, you mentioned removing the dummy table. So removing this pipeline prospects and only using this one right here, right? Step one?
Yeah, that's correct. We would like to only use that one. The old pipeline prospects, I would like to delete that. And then I don't know if it will mess up.
All right. It will. Things will break, but it's okay. It's okay. We're here to fix them. So the first thing, whenever you're doing anything messy, create a snapshot of the base. So go ahead and create a snapshot. We're going to take a snapshot. That way, if I break your base too much, we can always come back to what it was before. Okay. So when deleting tables, really the main, question you should ask yourself is are there any linked records? Does this affect any other tables? Right? So we don't have any hidden fields here. So we have company, artist, which are linked to opportunity name. And then that is pretty project tasks, right? So these are the 3 linked records. Let me bring them one next to the other. And what we want to do is go ahead and make sure that there aren't anything that depends on this. So if I go back to pipeline prospects copy, so Meredith, if I'm not wrong, you've already migrated company and artist. So you don't need these other linked records.
Right, I'm muted. I don't know. I don't need. I think that they're probably already linked in there.
Okay. So tell me how you got to pipeline. You just created a copy of this table, right?
Correct. I created a copy and then I changed the statuses. So that was the main thing that I changed was adding status.
In the future, you can just change the statuses directly here.
Right. I didn't know what I was doing.
That's okay. That's totally fine. So pro tip, you can always, and what's cool about it, if you do change them, so let's say follow-up becomes 10%.
Right.
It'll just update all of those with the 10%.
Cool. Okay.
So
Nice.
But that said, what it also does when you create a copy is that it'll also kind of make sure that it keeps the same linked records. Right?
Okay.
So we now, if you go to, so I have a project task linked record. And I also, if I go to active list and I see the fields, you have 2 linked records. You have a linked record project deadline, pipeline prospects copy, which is the linked record it created automatically, it being Airtable, the thing we're focused on, created a linked record automatically to consider your new table. So actually, you can actually go ahead and delete this table. And what you'll notice is that these 3 linked records in the tables they're linked to will just become single line text fields. So we're going to go ahead and delete this table. And remember, I'm going to company, artist, and project tasks are the 3 linked records. So let's go ahead and delete this table. And so if you go into contacts, we had a linked record here, which is pipeline prospects. That's what it was before. We can just go ahead and delete that. Active projects is same thing, right? It's at the contact level. And then same thing if we go to active list. Those are the projects. You'll notice that there's some, we'll keep these, right? Because those came from the old one, those lookups. We'll fix these in a moment, right? Because they depended on a linked record that no longer exists.
Right.
But we can delete project name, right? Because that is now a single select and it was replaced with this right here. Does that make sense or am I losing you a little bit?
I think it makes sense.
I think. Okay, well, I'll take that as a 6 out of 10. You know, it's okay. We'll aim for that. It's all right.
Okay. I mean, it's the information's all there, so it'll fix itself eventually.
So essentially, just what we've done is that when you create, so in other words, when you created that copy of your table, it created all of the linked records that you needed.
Okay.
Right. And so when you delete your old one, it'll just say like, oh, well, those linked records that you had before are now single line text. And the 2 things we need to kind of make sure is that you can clean up your bases after, and we'll recreate your lookups, right? Okay. And you didn't have any roll-ups on them, so you should be okay.
Okay.
Cool. Let's rename this.
Just just the whole thing, you know.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Do you feel confident that we checked off the dummy table?
Yes.
Boom. Okay. I kind of assume that this is the order you want to do it in, but is the next step that you want to populate active jobs? Is that kind of your next big boulder that you want to do? And tell me what you meant by populating active jobs.
Okay, so the active list, the order is fine. I don't really have any preference. Okay. The active list should be pulling jobs from the pipeline that are at probably at like a 50% job, 50% status level or higher.
Okay. So
So meaning like anything from 50%, I think there's 75 and
sure.
90. And then obviously if it's done, we don't need to be worrying about it. But any of those jobs that are in that status, I would like to pull them over here because I want to have tasks for those that are recorded.
Okay. And so is it just a mere be like, hey, we need to create tasks for this, right? What would be, how would you know which tasks you need to do for a deal that hits 50%?
They'll be different. So I need to populate the tasks that need to be done. Every client is a little bit different. I mean, there are some things that are the same, which are getting a certificate of insurance, contract negotiation, signing the contract, um, things like that. There are some that will always be the same,
Right?
but because every job is very different in terms of the artists that you're working with or the designs that you're doing, or just where it is, the location really dictates what the steps are that are necessary.
So what would you like to happen? What would you like to see in your active list, your task? Would you like to see maybe those common tasks or just a task that says, hey, create the tasks for this deal?
I think that we'll need to populate what the tasks actually are.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? I'm not sure
Yeah.
if
So
you're trying to get at something else though.
no, I'm not trying to lead you to anything. This is not a
Yeah.
leading question. It's a understanding your process question. So,
Yeah.
What we can do, right? So there's a few routes we can go down and I'll kind of talk to me about which one sounds appropriate, right?
Okay.
Or right for your workflow. So essentially what we can do is that whenever a deal hits that status, right? So let's say, this one, let's actually, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm that person who just messes up people's views. So I'm just going to create Aron's view. Best practice, don't let people mess with your views, lock them. So let's group by status or stage part. So someone in the chats mentioned scripts. We might get to scripts, but I want to give Meredith some easier options initially, right? Based on the fact that you have maybe standard tasks. So essentially, imagine someone moves from prospect to 50%, right?
Right.
A few options or how I'm imagining what you'd like is that you then create an active list, which creates maybe like a task that says create the tasks for this specific deal.
Sure. That seems like an extra step, maybe.
Or would you like to just have those common tasks populate right away?
I don't know if they're all that common though.
Right.
That's what I'm like. I don't know if you can use Airtable as a task management tool potentially.
Uh-oh.
Potentially.
I mean,
Maybe you can.
I think so. So there's a more not advanced but a little more involved route which we can go that says depending on the job type, right? You might have commonality based on the job type. So if it's an interior decor, you need to request. I'm not sure what I as you can see I have no interior decor,
Yeah.
so I clearly am not the expert here. But do your tasks depend on job type, or is there something in Airtable that could tell us what tasks need to be created for that specific deal?
There are some similarities with a job type, sure, but it's very because you're working with individual artists who are all very
Right.
unique. There's very different there's very different tasks per project also.
And so I guess what would that that ideal task manager in your mind do when a deal hits that confidence level where tasks need to be created. Does that make sense
I
as a
think that
question?
after, yeah, I mean, once it's in pre-production, there's a lot of work to be done after you sign a contract.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's like where, well, there's a lot that needs to be done before you sign a contract too, which is that, you're usually you're usually proposing a lot of artwork,
Right.
submitting designs, and then you're signing the contract. So there's a lot of upfront work before you even get to that phase. But there's little nitty gritty weird details to each of these projects. I guess I'm curious, can you manually input the tasks?
Yes. So you can
Okay.
automate them and you could manually input them. So
Correct.
how about we do the manual part, right? So you
Right.
can see tasks associated, let's say, to a new, once you get to 50%, you can create a few tasks. And then I'll show you how you can automate part of that. So if you have standard types of tasks at specific stages, well, those will be auto-populated as well, right? And it'll kind of give you that this is what managing tasks related to a deal or to a job would feel like. Note that
Mhm.
also, you could use another base that, once the deal is closed is much more granular around the tasks that need to happen. But this will kind
Okay.
of give you a sense of what the options are, right?
Sure.
So I'm hearing, go ahead.
No, no, no. I mean, that makes
Okay,
sense. I think it could make sense that we use a totally different base for task management.
sure.
Um, but then I feel like you might have to auto populate a lot of stuff or manually populate a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we could let's see what's possible from within
Okay,
this base.
great.
And then from there, you could say like, okay, we want to use another base, and we could talk about sync, which will let you share, information across bases. But and some folks are already recommending other tools in the chat. So
Right.
so let's, and that's okay. Like I'm totally okay with using another tool. So
Yeah, I appreciate it.
let's let's imagine that you want to create action items.
Hmm.
So active list. So let's take Rye Noodle. Rye Noodle just moved to 50% gap confidence.
Okay.
This one right here.
Yep.
And you're saying, okay, this is a interior lighting. So I'm just gonna
Sure.
boom, make that. I'm associating. And then I have this, I'm gonna put you as the lead.
Great.
Some work there. And then I have project tasks, right? So when I
Right.
click this plus button, it brings up all of my existing tasks, but we're creating new ones. So
Hmm.
Rye Noodle, what would be some regular tasks that you create for a lighting job, for instance? Just think of
Well,
your last lighting job and just like, you know, what,
um,
or
get
however
the
unique or not.
to get a recessed ceiling plan.
Recess. Ah,
Ceiling, or sorry, it's got a reflective ceiling plan. Wow, I'm really, really blowing
reflective
it.
ceiling plan, right? So
Yes.
that's not a task that exists. We're going to go ahead and add it. So now I have my first kind of action item for that specific deal. What would be the second thing you want to do?
Um,
It's okay.
there's
It's okay.
so many things. Um, Determine if it needs to be UL listed.
UL listed.
UL listing.
There we go.
Yeah, determination. Great.
Right. So now we've created two. Now we're doing this manually, right?
Yep.
So this is kind of saying, okay, well, now we have those two action items. If we move over to active list
Hmm.
and we go into Rye Noodle, I see those two action items,
Okay.
right? And I can say that they're, you kind of have nothing for, you can, let's say, not at risk or in progress, but one at progress, one with nothing, right? So now
Right.
you have, that's kind of the manual way of doing it in Airtable,
Okay.
right? But you can automate this step as well. So let's say, I imagine that, let's say Rye Noodle again moves to, pre-production. You mentioned that at pre-production, there are some specific action items that need to happen. So coming back here,
Yep.
what are those specific action items that need to happen in pre-production?
Sending a COI, confirming crew, confirming access hours, equipment booking and equipment delivery.
I'm trying to write them out as quickly. Let's take those three, right? So we've got equipment booking, confirming active hours, sending COI, and do those depend on interior lighting, or is that most things in pre-production will need those types of work items?
Most things in pre-production will need those work items.
Okay, so let's automate that step where any deal that hits pre-production will automatically create those task items and fill out all the information you know. And then in the next step, we'll show you how you can manage those like action items based on, who's responsible for them, who's responsible for the deal, and give you that nice kind of Kanban look for those action items for your existing deals. Would that make sense?
Okay, sure.
Okay, cool. So
yes.
in Airtable,
I hate when people say sure to me because it makes you confused.
No. I'm with you. I think we're going to get to a point where everything's going to kind of come together and you'll get a sense of how you can build, if you want to, this kind of ability to, as your deals progress, you add action items, you like layer them in. Okay. And then each person can kind of see what action items they have for the various deals that they have open, but also have the ability to be like, hey, this is unique. Let me create some action items that are a little different for this deal, and then get a sense of like percent complete and things like that. So I'm like getting excited, but let's start with automations here. Let's start with step one. So our first step here is to say, okay, when a deal hits pre-production, let's just create those action items automatically that you need to do for each deal. So in Airtable, this is where I go into like my educator hat and I say this all the time. So in Airtable, you can use Airtable automations to create trigger action sequences on top of your Airtable base to say, when a deal hits 90%, go ahead and create these 3 action items. So we're going to call this pre-production task list.
Okay.
Right? So then you just need to say, like, when do we want this automation to run? So we want this automation to run when a deal hits 90%, right? So when a record matches specific conditions, in our case, it's saying when a record in pipeline prospects, is at, so we're going to go stage, is 90%, right? So if any new record comes into this bucket, we want to go ahead and run this automation, right? If we run a test, it's going to bring up one of these records. So this is just telling us, hey, let's just test with this one, right? So we've got field values. This one is the life-sized bull. That's the feed fire, opportunity named feed fire right here, right? So we're testing with this one.
Okay.
And then what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to create kind of those action items, those records in active list related to the deal that's been prioritized. So add action. We're going to go ahead and create some records. So we're going to create a record in active list. And what fields do we know, right? So we know that we're going to name that action item something, right? So we're going to go name. Sorry, the table is going to be active list. We already have that. The field is going to be name. So let me go back. Which ones you said? What was that first one?
Of the task?
Yeah.
Get a COI.
Sending a COI right here.
Yep.
Right. Next thing, we know that the linked record. So the owner, do you know that? Maybe you want to assign it after?
We could assign that. I typically deal with the insurance, so you can assign it to me.
Okay, cool. So we're going to assign the owner to be Meredith. And then we also know what project, what pipeline, what deal it's related to. Right? Which is taking from step 1. So we know that the deal name is that record in step 1. right? So the opportunity name. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
This
here we're
is
going to put,
next level, but I'm following.
okay. Okay. Next level is good. Next level, right? So this is the first task, right?
Okay.
Let's like task number 2. We're going to do another record, right? We're going to do the exact same thing, but like everything's going to be the same, right? So the name, what is that second? You mentioned sending a COI. What is the second kind of action item when you get to?
Confirming access hours.
Awesome. Boom. So boom, we're going to go into name. Sorry, we already put name, owner. Who, do you want to give some work to somebody else, or you kind of taking that on as well?
Um, I can take that on as well. The assignments are usually per project, so most projects have an owner just individually.
Okay, well, we can pull that information from the owner, from the pipeline, right? That's not what we're doing. Are folks in the chat following? I feel like I'm either going too quickly, too slowly. Give me like a thumbs up now that you can hear me, that this is making sense, and at least some value kind of beyond what I'm showing here. Cool. So we'll do 2 as an example. So confirming access hours, owner, and then we want to associate. I put active hours. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let's put that from step 1. And we're just associating it to the right that. So let's click done. I mean, sending active list, confirming access hours. That all feels right. Okay. So let's turn this on and let's see what happens. Like, what is this in actuality? So if all work, and I have no promises that I set it up correctly, it might break, but luckily we can fix it. So let's say snap tags moves to 90%. Right? What we should see is that we've run that kind of, it's in progress. So it's creating the records. It's ran successfully. So if I go to snap tags and I look at their project tasks, we already have those 2 tasks created. If I go into active lists, snap tags has those two active kind of tasks ready, right? So now whenever a deal gets prioritized, you have those set tasks and you can add to these.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense?
I think, yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think that the flexibility of being able to add custom ones will be important too.
So let's say there's some custom ones here, right? You've created these 2 automatically, and let's say something very custom. You can just add a record.
Okay.
Right? 2 snap tags to say custom task.
Okay. Cool.
Owned by
whoever.
Shannon, let's say. And then so now I see the tasks related to snap tags, and I see it the other way around too. So if I go to that snap tags deal, I can see that those 3 tasks related to snap tags. So you see them in both, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Okay.
So you have that option. You have the option of automating, and you could create different tasks at each step of the pipeline. Oops, moved it. Can folks still see? Yep. Move that down a little bit. There we go. Can folks still see my, yeah, I think it should be good. Okay. There we go. Okay. So, but you can also start layering in different tasks as you move the deals down the pipeline, right? So we created one that's specific to 90%, but you can say once you hit 100, we need a signed contract. We want to do a press release. We want to do whatever, right? And these can be sequential or kind of measured.
Can you also have it that if can you also have it that if it's at a specific percentage of the stage or higher that the tasks will automate? So it's just because sometimes it might be at different stages that those tasks are required.
Right. So do you mean that you move a deal from 10 to 90 and that means you need to do those tasks, or do you mean different tasks at different levels?
sometimes depending on the client, the stages don't dictate the tasks. It's that, or they can be interchangeable. So
Right.
sometimes you sign the contract and you need the COI right away, not when it's in pre-production.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so what you can do is there's so many ways you can handle this. So really, like, you can make it so that any deal over 50 has those tasks, or you can have like a toggle that says like COI at 90%, right, and run the automation then.
Or just keeps it there. Okay. So it can
Right. So
move.
right now, how you have it, it goes at pre-production, but nothing says that you have to do it right away, right? You can
Okay.
update the due date, you can add a note, right?
Okay.
Really up to you. Or you can also do is in, right?
Mm,
So let's say you can say, okay, if we're over 50 in
right. So you can
any
just
of
keep
these,
it on there.
run the
So anytime
automation.
you move, so that would mean anytime you move the stage, then it would still have that task associated.
Yes. So the
Okay.
task, once they're created, they stay there, right?
Okay.
So you're
Got it.
just creating a record. You're saying this is related to that, and then you could assign a status to it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool. I feel like, does that make sense to so folks in the chat? I feel like we're so narrowly focused. I hope folks in the chat are still learning something from kind of what we're building here. So you can really control what you run in terms of automations to whatever you'd like, right? So as granular or as high level as you'd like, you can run the automation at multiple times, one time. So, the challenge of Airtable is you have to set all of this up, right?
Right.
Luckily, a bunch of people who work at Airtable. Folks in the chat can come on the stream, right? But it is a lot of legwork to like understand your process to the point where you're like, oh, we're gonna run this automation at this time, and those caveats of like, well, we might run it, we might not need that task. Something you need to build into your system.
Okay. Cool.
So okay, right. So the next thing in the active list, I want to come back to. So I'm gonna go back to is 50, just so you have this set up like this. Solid verbal, done. So this is created, and you could add more template tasks.
Okay.
Okay. See tasks for active jobs, right? So this is the Kanban view, right? This is what we're
Yes.
talking about. So
Correct.
so there's a question in the chat. So yes, so the automation will run whenever a record matches the conditions that you specified in the automation. So the question is, should you delete the the tasks if it's not relevant? I would always recommend that, right? Just so you're not having like tasks that aren't relevant. And you can create the automation such that it triggers again in the later stages if there are no tasks completed relative to whatever. So ultimately, unfortunately, sometimes the answer in Airtable is you can do whatever you want, which is a challenge because you have to set it up properly. So to
Okay.
answer your question, Colleen, yes, you'd have to delete and then potentially rerun the automation after, if that makes sense. Hopefully. Cool. Okay. So how would you like to, I feel like this is just me being like, what is your workflow? Tell me about how you work. So when you said Kanban, would you like to see like, okay, let's say Meredith or Shannon or whoever, all of their action items that are across different stages that are due soon? What are those? How do you want to visualize your action items or your
I
active list
think I want to
tasks?
visualize action items by project.
Okay.
I don't know if
Okay.
that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few ways you can. So right now we're grouping by project.
Right.
So we're saying here are all of the action items grouped by project,
Right.
right?
So it's already, you're saying it's already kind of doing that.
A little bit, but it sounds like this isn't the way you want to see it.
Right, exactly. That's not the way we want to see it. And that's just from another team member was saying that it would be helpful for her to see it in the other format, almost like their little sticky notes of like
Yeah.
across the way.
Okay, so the challenge with a Kanban is that, a Kanban can only have one axis. It can only have like, you can't create like a Kanban with another Kanban in it. So what I mean by that, let's say we want to show your team member. So let's imagine your team member is Shannon. And I'm going to give Shannon, pardon? Am I right?
I really
Is it Shannon?
imagine for real.
I know. I don't. So I'm just giving a few tasks to Shannon here. And let's give a few kind of task status, right? Just so we have some information across each bucket that we want to put it in. I mean, it could have been your employee who's coming, right? So I don't know. I'm
Right.
happy I got it right. Awesome, like that. Okay, so you kind of, when you're creating a Kanban, let's create a Kanban view. And so it'll tell you what single select do you want to categorize. This is going to create your buckets.
Got
right?
it. Okay.
Those
So
big
it's different
buckets.
than what I was envisioning it was.
But I think
Okay.
we can get to where you want to go a little bit. So let's go task status, right? So this is saying, okay, this is a view of all of the active kind of tasks that we need to do, right? And order lanterns, which is related to which project. So Lenti, instead of clicking in, you can customize these and kind of give each project like upfront real estate. You can give yourself a task due date, which it isn't seem populated, but you can get a project deadline as well. So this is just saying, show me upfront all of this information, right? But I can't do a Kanban. I can't have one bucket per project with a smaller Kanban in it that says, here are those tasks. But what I can do, let's say I want to do, give me every, I don't know how to say it. Like, give me every one of my, oh, that's a great point in the chat. I'll get to that in a moment. Yeah, that's a good point. Give me all of Shannon's tasks, right? So filter down, only show me where owner is exactly Shannon. And then that gives kind of, we can call this Shannon's active list. Whoops.
Okay.
That's one way. And really you have full control over, so you can say, only show me action items or tasks for deals that are closed or that are due in the next 2 weeks or that, are worth X. And there's another good point in the chat. So instead of adding it as a linked record and showing that linked record, you can also concatenate the primary field, which I know feels like a lot of big words.
Yeah.
But they're just saying you can bring the name of the client directly at the top. But again, that won't give you that two kind of that matrix feel, if you will. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it does.
Do you feel like this fulfills that need a little bit, or because I'm wondering how could you?
I just don't necessarily know if, I mean, do many people use Airtable for task management?
Oh yeah, like I mean, I personally use it for task management like when I think
what
of
what way do you set it up? Because I just don't know if like my tasks. This doesn't seem like I know what to do. Like if this was my view, I'd be like, I don't know.
Right. What should your, yeah, it's a good point. I guess it is I never thought of it that way. I guess too, there's an expression like, so worm and horseradish, the world is horseradish. So like I work out of Airtable, so that view to me is natural. Right. So like, for instance, I can look at my tasks, and this is actually how I manage my tasks is very similar to this, where I'll have like a due date and I'll put, so let's say this one is due, Friday, and this one is due, next week.
Yeah, maybe it's by due date would make the most sense of like when.
Yeah. And then you could just create a calendar. right? So
Okay.
now I can see what's due this month, and I can even like kind of put things that aren't scheduled
Move
onto the
it.
calendar, but I can also
Okay.
color by the status,
Mm,
right? So now I know I would probably maybe like at risk feels like it should be red, feels more natural,
right.
right? So like that's a problem, right? So if something is due and like soon, that's
Okay.
like that visual cue to me is how I personally like to organize. Like I'll first look at prioritization and be like, oh, this is more important, set the due dates and look at it in a calendar to be like, here are the things that need to happen this week.
Cool.
And you can have like start date, due date where you have a range and things like that. But I do agree with you, like it doesn't feel like a task manager, right? You kind
Okay.
of have to mold it into what you want.
Right. Okay.
Does this feel like you something you could work with? I'm happy to answer any
No,
questions.
it
It
does.
feels like
It does. I just haven't really wrapped my head around like why I would use. For me, the grid view makes sense for the
right,
tasks and checking them off. Just for other team members, I've just wanted to see it in a different way, and I just don't know yet what would make them
right,
feel the most supported. So I think that's
totally.
just a conversation I have to have, like of how they want to see the data,
Hmm.
and maybe it is about prioritization of tasks, and then we could
Right.
sort it that way. Of I
Yeah.
know that you kind of have that in there with the at risk thing, but I think that it would just need to be a little bit more refined. But it
Yeah.
makes
There's a,
sense of how of what Kanban does, and I think I was just mistaken about the function.
right. So if you think, actually, I think you have a good point of like, I think as a team, this is like, you should kind of agree on what those
Right,
buckets are.
exactly.
And
Right,
then, what's great is that you can create your own views. If you prefer seeing your tasks in a
right,
grid view, you can call this kind of Meredith view and make a personal view,
right.
right? So this means that only you,
Oh, interesting.
oh, I can make a, yeah, I can make a one. So let me duplicate this one. I can't make it the only one.
Mm,
That's some like niche
gotcha.
Airtable knowledge. You need to have two grid views to make a personal one. Personal like that. So like that. And now no one could edit this one, but folks could like hide it. So if you have a bunch of personal views, it won't like pollute
Okay.
their view picker. So now you have like your
Oh,
way of viewing the information. Someone else has their own way of viewing the information, and
right,
really up to you to how you structure it. And someone else could have a Kanban. So usually the best practice is like you have team level views that are shared, right? So like all
right,
of your collaborative views are the ones that you're working with as a team, or you can
right,
even lock those views, and then personal views for anything that's like, oh, this is me just looking at my information.
right. Okay.
Cool. I wonder if folks actually like in the chat, do you use these different kind of view types? Let me know. I personally just actually I give all this great advice, but then if you look at my bases, it's just like 50 views, or I'm just like messing around with existing views. So I hope you'll have better structure than I do, Mary. This is my tip.
We're working on it.
Awesome. So last one is, does that feel right? Can we check this one off?
Yes.
Awesome. So the team of, yeah, when you're a team of one, you don't really have to worry about other people, but you're a team of three now. So
Yes.
it's
Well,
like a small family. So you got to
and
worry about other
and
people.
dozens of contractors, but
That's true. It's a team of
yeah,
hundreds ultimately.
team of many.
Cool. So talk to me a little bit about forecasting.
So my one question about forecasting, and this is a little bit of a down the line question, is that
Sure.
so this is based on this, I believe, is based on the just the fiscal year of 2021. What
Right.
happens when you go into 2022, and how does it pull the information? Because I think that the way that this table is set up is that it's pulling just that information. So I don't know what to do like when this is obviously like a later question because we just are in 2021, but of what happens beyond this.
Yeah. When you've, yeah, like I mean, 2022, maybe at 50 employees, you've got $10 million worth of deal. You got to distinguish this year from next year.
Right.
So I'll, what I'll do is I'll maybe walk through how to build like this year, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you should think about next year in terms of like just structuring it now so you
Sure.
don't
Yeah.
hit. So
That's great. We can talk about now and then we can talk about later.
yeah, no, but I think you can right away structure your table such that when you get to next year, you don't
Yep.
have to change anything, right? That's the
Okay.
goal, right? So right now we're rolling up the total value here, right?
Yeah.
So let's imagine we just want to roll up this year, and I know that you've done it here, but I want to walk through it again because it'll be good kind of explanation for how we do it for 2022. So right now, let's take all of these event installation deals. Where were they? I kind of moved them to, let's go into everything. And then I had, okay. So let's take this deal, for instance, Zunder.
Yep.
This is, let's find a deal. Let's group by, instead of stage, let's group by job type. Right? So that's that 4 million right here.
Yep.
6 million. That's the one we just rolled up.
Right.
And let's say we only want to roll up this year's deal. So this one, you have a fiscal year.
Right. So that's based on the date. So it's
Okay.
not, if it doesn't have a date, then it's not doing that.
Okay, let's give this one a date. There we go. So this one's saying, okay, this one
Yep.
is in Q1 fiscal year 21.
Right.
And let's say we only want to roll up those that are in this quarter. So let's give an example. So like, or 2021, right? That's our goal.
Yeah, that's probably the year.
Okay. So forecast by job type, insert left. So let's go, 2021 total value by job type. So we're going to use a roll up. And I know roll ups are very like intimidating to people, but it's essentially just saying, go to every linked record, go to this field. In our case, it's going to be net estimate, for instance. And we only want to include linked records that meet certain conditions. So we're saying only roll up. I hate this little small, like it's kind of, we can't see. So we're just saying only roll up where the opportunity quarter contains 21. Right? Okay. So we're saying if it contains the year 2021, go ahead and do the sum of values. Right? So if I go into, it seems like all of our deals in interior sculpture are in 2021. So if I go into pipeline and prospects, oh, I see why. Okay, sorry. Event installation is at 0. I was like, I messed something up, right? Right now it's at 0 because the only deal we have in 2021 is this one. And let's give it 1 million, right? And we should see if all went well. It's currently calculating. Give it a second. There you go. We got our 1 million for 2021, right? But if we were to move it to 2022, let's 2022 is far away, right? Feels like a we're all excited about it, but it's far away, right? This one updates to 2022. So we shouldn't see it by forecast by job type. It's no longer there, but we can do a 2022 total, right? So we're just going to duplicate this field. And we're going to say, okay, this is 2022. And instead of here contains 21, we're just going to go 22. And now we're rolling up in the right value. So you can just keep adding columns.
Okay, so you could keep adding columns and then hide them to create new views every year? Okay.
Exactly. So you can just hide those fields to 2021, right? And what's cool about this is that what you can do is start creating charts that says, what is our forecasted 2022 versus our forecasted 2021 by job type.
Right.
Right. So by actually keeping it in that column is actually useful, and you can as you said, just kind of hide those fields for each value that is like, okay, this is a 2022 view. We don't really, we don't care about
Oh,
those.
cool. That's actually super helpful because then you can see it like farther out, I guess.
Right. And last tip, I'll give you this. So let's say your distance from goal. This is just being fancy. This is not necessary. This, we're just trying to be, let's say we're
Well,
trying
and
to be real.
the one thing is
Go
that the
ahead.
goal will change probably yearly.
Right. That's, yeah. So this would be just from 2021, right? Because everything here, let me just, sorry, I'm going too quickly. I got excited there. So your distance from goal, if we look at how it's structured, it takes the gross estimate from pipeline and the goal of 2021. So this is a 2021 goal, right? And your gross estimate from pipeline, this one looks at 2021, right? But only looks at 50%. So this is gross estimate 2021, total gross estimate.
It only
So
looks
all
at
of these,
though, or 50%
does that make sense?
and higher. Does it only look at 50% or 50% and higher though?
In this case, it's looking at 50% or higher.
Okay, cool.
Right. So just folks in the chat still following is that there's a second condition in the field that Meredith had already created. So saying that only count deals that are over 50%. In the field that I created, just to show you as an example, there wasn't that secondary kind of like this, right? So Colleen asked a good question. This is just oh, right. What you're saying is you're right. You should close.
Yeah, close should be checked too, not
no, close lost shouldn't be there.
Close lost. Yeah, not we don't want that.
Right. Okay, cool. So to answer your question, like, yeah, you should have 2021 goal distance from 21. And actually, I think it makes sense to keep this at a yearly level. That way, if you miss your goal, you don't lose that knowledge of what the gap was for that year.
Right.
So in 2022, you would create a new goal and you would create a new roll up for that value and the new distance from that goal.
Okay. And then you could just hide the other fields.
Exactly. So when we're in 2022, you can say bye-bye to 2021.
Okay, good. Got it. Okay.
There you go.
Cool.
Like this. Awesome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'll definitely have to do some staring at it, but
well, luckily, so there's a great question from someone: what kind of calculations and formulas can be done in the roll-up field? And you can, when you click, you get all of the values. So you can calculate the average deal size, how many deals you have in each category. You can count the biggest deal you have, the smallest deal you have. You can also mix and match. So you can say, give me like the sum plus the max. I don't know why that would be interesting, but you could do that. So you have a wide array, and then you have these like concatenate and array unique, which, we'll get into on another stream, but can be quite useful. But essentially any kind of mathematical operation on the fields that you're rolling up can be used, and you can mix and match different ones. You can also use if and things like that if you want as well. Cool. Are we at 4? Do you feel like forecasting, was that everything you wanted to do there?
Yeah, I feel that like that's great for now. I think otherwise there'll be a little information overloaded. I definitely am going to be playing around with views, but I think that's part of the easier stuff.
Definitely. Well, listen, I thank you for coming on to, well, actually, we can do a little balloon. We can do success. So usually we do these little balloons. I don't know if it's going to work though. I've been messing around. Let me just do this. Oh no, we've lost the browser. There we go. There we go. So on the stream, there's confetti falling on the stream.
Awesome. Cool.
There we go. Confetti is there.
Confetti don't see confetti, I guess, but I don't see it either.
One day I'll have it fall on my stream.
Okay, cool.
Stream as well. So Meredith, just a huge thanks for coming. I know this was a lot of information.
Yeah, it's okay.
I can sense that is the fact, but your base is actually really good, right? So you've got a really good
Awesome.
base, a good structure. Hopefully this pushed you a little bit down the line. I really appreciate you coming today. And yeah, thanks for everyone for joining first stream of 2021. We'll be back not next week, the week after with more streams. So yeah, check out AATT.io/calendar for upcoming streams. And with that, huge thanks to you, Meredith, and I'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.